Hello, this is Will Faerber from Art to Ride, and today we're looking at a second submission by Lauren of her horse Matchbox. Already we see from our first session that this horse is much more active now in the walk. He's stepping more regularly forward. I like how Lauren is stepping up with the horse a little more. She has him working a little more actively around her, which is keeping the back legs much more active. The last time we saw this horse, his step behind was very much like stuck in glue, so to speak, as I like to say, or stuck in mud. And now it's starting to come a little more forward. Slowed down a little bit there, but this is a much more forward swinging walk than what we had before. Needs to be a little faster there, but you're getting it at times where it's getting really good. So that's where we want to start. Always remember we have to get the horse stretching in the walk first. You know, I'm always surprised at how many people just don't realize the importance of working in the walk. That is, giving the horse an opportunity to really get there first in the walk before we go up into the trot, and then obviously the canter after that. But this is really good, much improved walk. Now this looks like it's going somewhere. As my father used to always say, you know, the horse should feel like it's going home for dinner, not too excited, but you know, a nice big swinging open walk like it's going towards something that wants to get to. So that's how we want our walk to be. There's nothing worse than being on the back of a horse that seems to be just sort of creeping along with you step by step. As it kind of pulls its feet out of mud, which is what this one looked like the last time, but no longer. So this is a much better walk. Already things are well improved. And a much better stretch also later on. Of course, I've watched this tape to see where you're at, and everything has improved over the last time I saw you. You know, and it's also so great, just wanted to say that everybody that's allowing their videos to be seen by others, you know, I know everybody would like to be perfect, but it's really great that you're all willing to share your experiences here, which is part of why I do this, hoping that everyone can learn from each other, you know, kind of like one big pony club, a world pony club, let's look at it that way. So everybody can learn from each other's mistakes and see each other growing and see their horses changing and realize that this really works. Once again, the biggest problem that I encounter with most people is they've just really never seen correct riding done, much less been on a horse that's correctly trained. You know, so they have a very wrong sense of what it is, or that they just don't really know what the potentials are. So once again, this is really great, and I appreciate everybody sharing your videos with everyone else. And you know, hopefully we will be developing a real community out there of people helping each other. That's the whole idea. I hope you're all communicating on Facebook and that sort of thing, and talking amongst themselves about what's working for you and what's not. And hopefully I've shown you all that, you know, you don't have to be a Hercules to train a horse. That doesn't take any, you know, Herculean feats of strength. It just takes being willing to wait until the horse develops correctly. So very good work. Now he gets a little bit slow here, but this is really good compared to the last time I saw it. It's better. He's stretching a little deeper. It still needs to be a little more active here, but it's certainly swinging better than it was. And he gets moments where it looks really quite good, like right there. See, just a few moments that he stretches down, how everything frees even a little more. We can see the shoulder begins to swing. So a lot of times horses will have a tendency, you know, to put their nose down and then kind of slow down on you too. So you have to watch that and be ready to send them on forward again as soon as they get the stretch, and not just let them slow down and stop. We don't want them to peanut roll the way we see kind of some Western horses where their noses are on the ground, but they're still hollow. So once again, remember that the position of the head and neck only facilitates the back coming through. It doesn't mean it's going to. It's just as a better position to help the horse to do so. So once again, then we have to send them actively forward once we get that. Now right there, even though he slowed there, I saw a little more action in the hock, and that's what I'm looking for. So once again, he's still pulling a little bit with the shoulders here. You can kind of see how flat-footed those front feet are going. He's kind of pulling a little bit there. The more you get him to stretch, I still think you need to make him just a little more active in this portion here and just send him on a little bit more. But this is way better than you were doing in the last video, and you're doing a much better job of lunging him, that you keep keeping the slack out of the front line, which I want you to keep working on. You can still do a little better with that. That is, just try to keep all that slack out of the line. Maybe you shorten it. I actually shorten my lines so they're just a little bit more than a 20-meter circle. I find most commercial lunge lines that you buy are really kind of too long, and you have too much excess rope to deal with, which just complicates issues. You know, I like my lunge lines to be about, you know, maybe 4 feet longer than the horse if it were on a 20-meter circle, because that's about where I'd like them to be. Usually if they're going to go in a bigger circle than that, I'm going to be walking with them anyway. That is, I'm going to be walking along with them on a larger circle myself. Because remember, we always must stay close enough to the horse that we can use the whip if we need to, because otherwise the horse will quickly pick up the fact that, if you have a lazy horse, that kind of horse, he's going to quickly pick up the fact that, you can't get to him with that whip, and he'll just do whatever he wants to do. Because we do have to be able to touch the horse with the whip occasionally. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to communicate anything. Just they quickly get over being threatened, so to speak, by just holding it up, or snapping. They quickly forget, quickly realize that snapping doesn't mean anything at all if it's not connected to anything. So once again, we have to be close enough that we can touch them once in a while if we need to. So your lunging here is really good. Once again, I'd like to see a little more slack out of that rein. That's much better than when I saw you the last time, though. So if you just shorten up on that rein about 4 feet from where you have there and walk a little more actively, then you'd be able to get him even a little more active than you're doing here. But once again, we can see even here he's starting to have a little bit of a bounce to his trot there, starting to have a little more spring off the back end. So that means the back end is starting to help him in his movement. He's not just dragging himself by his front end. So once again, as he goes down there, that's when we want to send him on a little bit. So we start to get a little more swing underneath. Once again, we close the horse from the back to the front. There, that's nice right there. And even there, the shoulder starts to swing a little more freely. Now, he could still be a little more active there, but even the front legs look a little better. He starts to swing from the shoulder more than just kind of pull himself along with that kind of flat-footed step. Here definitely needs to be more active. That's getting better there. Once again, I'd just like to see that slack out of your line. And I still think you can ask this horse for a little bit more. As I said, I think you could take up that line a little shorter and get just that little bit closer to him. And he looks to me like he needs a little tap of the whip once in a while to remind him. And once again, if you're not good with the whip, as I tell people all the time, the real skill of lunging is being able to put the whip where you need it to be accurately. And I tell people this all the time, go in your backyard at home and practice with your whip with each hand until you can, you want to be able to hit a target that's about, 3.5 feet off the ground, about where you would touch a horse in that fleshy part at the bottom of the bottom of the buttocks there, that above the hock. There's only 3 places we ever touch with a whip, there and right at the side where your leg would be. And if you're really good at it on a horse that's flipping around on you, you can run the lash out and tap him on the shoulder to send him around, but that's the only time you'd ever want to do that. So once again, that was a better trot than we saw last time, better overall lunging. Once again, could still be a little more active here, but compared to what I saw last time. And once again, see how as he stretches down, how we see the bottom of the neck loosen up. That's the horse letting go of those muscles and starting to use the correct set of muscles right there. You see how as he lowered, all of a sudden the step got longer. So keep watching the back ends of your horses, folks, as you're doing this, because that's what we're trying to work. Too often people are very concentrated on the face and the neck of the horse, and they think that's all that training is about, is somehow magically getting this head and neck into some magic position. But it's not about that. It's about what's coming through behind. So once again, like a horse like this, as you see, his neck comes straight out of his body, almost straight forward. So he's never going to have a high headset the way you'd see, some of these modern warm bloods or a Frisian or something like that, who has these big sloping shoulders and the neck come out. He's just not built that way. That doesn't mean that he can't collect. It just means that when he collects, his neck is not going to be in the same position as some horse whose neck has a big sloping shoulder and the neck goes straight up out of the body rather than forward. So as you see with this horse, his neck goes straight forward out of the body. So that's where his neck needs to be. We can't make him into something, square peg and round hole, that sort of thing. And that's what we see people doing with horses all the time. And this is coming really nicely here, though. Just needs to be a little more active. If you just send him on a little bit more, I think it's there like that. There, he starts to show a little more spring in the back end. Remember, that's what we're trying to do, is put the springs on the horse so they become comfortable. No horse is comfortable to ride in real gaits, that is, unless it's working over its back, because that's what keeps it soft. Now, we see people with saddlebreds and Tennessee walkers and these kinds of things, and sadly, many dressage horses these days, that have lost all their spring, and all they're really doing is picking their legs up and putting them back down, but there's no thrust off the ground. And in dressage, upper levels are dependent on that thrust, not just being able to step the legs through or lift them higher, so to speak. That's never what we're looking for. Now, this is really good. This is so much better now. If this were just a little bit more active, keep working for a little more than you're getting here, but he's stretching nicely into it. Getting some really good work here. Still a little flat-footed, but once again, that will come. This isn't a horse that different horses are built differently. This horse is not built with giant springs, so that's why you have to build them as best you can, and you can. So once again, not a bad stretch here. Just needs to be just that little bit more active, but actually that's quite nice there for him. And what you're going to find with this one, once he really starts to stretch, you're going to want to lengthen those side reins a little bit. So as soon as he stretches down, if you see that that he begins to curl back a little bit at the bottom, that is, the face begins to come behind the vertical, then you'd want those side reins to be a little bit longer, and ultimately not to use them at all, as you see us do very often. Once again, the beauty of training horses correctly is they don't resist it, because this is the way nature intended them to move, and this is the way nature intended them to develop. I mean, imagine if you took a child into a gymnasium and you're going to teach him strength training, and you didn't teach him how to lift with his legs and how to engage his core and that sort of thing. What would happen pretty soon? The kid would be having his knees blown out and this sort of thing, which sadly is what we see in so many sports these days, where the parents don't realize how important their fitness, the child's actual fitness is and conditioning is to being able to do many of these sports that they have them doing. So they end up just getting injured for life, just like, I mean, it was very normal when I grew up. All the kids who were the basketball and football stars all ended up crippled by the time they were 30 years old, from all the injuries they'd had. So we don't want to do that to our children, and we don't want to do it to our horses either. We want them to live long, happy, healthy lives that are productive and useful, and that they are comfortable throughout their life, just not a life of misery, so to speak, where they're going to be a half cripple for whatever is remaining of it. So once again, this is getting much better here. Now notice that's starting to spring a little more. I'm starting to see a little more springs in him, so that's really good. That's really what we're looking for. This kind of horse is not built with, a lot of sort of built-in suspension, so to speak, but you can build suspension into any horse. So any horse that's not working over its back, when you get it working over its back, it's going to improve its gaits by at least tenfold, ultimately. So this is much, much better. And once again, all your lunging work here has been much more focused than the last time. Now this is really good. Now you're really starting to get into reach out there. This is really nice. Now we're starting to get what we're looking for. Now that's looking really good there. And once again, remember, as this gets better, you'll get to the point where he'll just come out and do this. But what we have to understand is that in the beginning, we want to end every day as well as we can. That's what we want to do. So it's not important the steps that you go through. And as a beginner, yes, maybe I might be able to get there faster for you and that sort of thing, because I've just been doing it longer. But if you get there is what's important. And once again, what I'm trying to show all of you folks is that, none of this is rocket science. I mean, it kind of is in the sense of understanding how it all works. Once again, if you read Gerd Hirschman's books and some of the ones from the past, like The Way to Perfect Horsemanship by Udo Berger, which is another wonderful book on how all of this works that was written back in the 50s. So once again, none of this information is new that I'm giving you folks. It's not new at all. It's just a little bit gotten forgotten in the course of the rush to everybody to make the horse business into a big industry, and lots of people making money. And just like everything else, unfortunately, the horse business took off so fast, and there really weren't a lot of people who knew how to do it, because we'd lost so many at World War II. By the time the riding came back again, there weren't enough people left to really teach people. But that was really good. And once again, now this work on the under saddle is much, much better than I saw before. This is a really good stretch here. Once again, he could just be that tiny bit more active, but this is really, really good work, and this will develop this horse. And this is a perfect example. I mean, look how this horse now under the rider is just starting to spring forward. You're seeing him really begin to lift up and push you forward. Whereas in the last video that I saw of you, I just got a sense that the horse was kind of dragging you along by its shoulders. But now I get a sense of the horse really pushing off its back end. So that's wonderful, and that's what we want. That's what it means to ride a horse from behind. That's what it means to be a dressage rider. If you are riding a horse by pulling its head back at you all the time, you're not a dressage rider. You're just riding badly and injuring your horse in the process. Horses never become light by holding against their mouths. I don't know whoever could possibly think that the end result or when it would come, but the only thing that's going to happen if you hold endlessly against the horse's mouth, it's going to go deader and deader, or you're going to break it at the third vertebrae, and now it's going to be light, but it's going to be behind the bit light. And that's even worse than being above the bit. It takes longer to correct. So that was really a good work there. And look how you come back to this beautiful walk. I mean, this is so much improved over the last time I saw you. You can still open up a little bit more, but now, as I said, you walk, I get a sense that it's going someplace. And that's what we want. We want a sense like it's flowing. And that's what makes riding wonderful, when we get this sense of flow. Once again, I was thinking about how, most of us these days are pretty ring bound when it comes to riding, because a lot of us just don't live in areas where there are good suitable places where we really can take horses out. And so we kind of have to be sure that we work them correctly so that we regain that kind of sense of freedom. And that's what real dressage does. It does it in a ring, but it gives you that sense of the horse lifting you, and you get that sense of flying again, which is what we all love to ride horses. At least I hope you do, for that sensation of freedom that ultimately comes with it when you're riding a correctly trained horse. It's the most amazing feeling. I can tell you that, it's very similar. The feeling I get in a dressage ring, with a really well-balanced, collected horse that's coming up underneath me and I can open and close the stride. It's very much like the same feeling that I had galloping a horse cross-country, in a 3-day event or fox hunting. Same kind of thing, because it's lifting me up. It gives me that feeling of excitement, and like we're really doing something together. And that's what you should strive for. That's what, we must never lose. We never must let riding become dumbed down to the point that we lose that element of, of personal growth that should go along with learning how to ride horses correctly. So once again, this is really a good walk, much improved over last time. Could be a little bit longer right there. And once again, you see the little dip behind the saddle there as the horse goes by. Pay attention to that. And what you'll see as we go on, and that's once again why I want these videos. I'm very happy, those of you who will make your videos public, because it really helps other people to see. We can all see all these horses developing all over the world all together, and what a wonderful job everyone's doing. And also, once again, to realize that you can train your horse. Once you understand these basic principles that guide us, the whole mystery of horse training just kind of goes away. It doesn't matter what you do, the principles remain the same. You want to jump, you just put fences in the way. As the famous great 3-day event coach Jack Legoff used to say, jumping is just dressage with fences in the way, which is exactly what it is when it's done really, really well. So once again, beautiful swinging walk in this. This is so much better than we saw last time. I really get a sense of freedom. Look how his back legs step forward. There isn't that hesitation. And once again, he doesn't look like he's walking on flypaper anymore. So much better. And once again, you'll find your horses, once you ride them like this, they become willing participants. They actually look forward to coming out and being ridden, There's a reason horses resist and try to buck people off, and all the things they do is because the people are making them miserable. If you make it a fun game for the horses, is what it should be, they become interested. Think of that. They have very little else to do, especially if they're mares or geldings and they're not being bred. What do they have to live for other than to eat another bale of hay? So life could be pretty boring standing in a 10-foot stall, and if we, or a 12-foot stall, or however size the stall is, but if we bring them out and torture them, what do you think is going to happen? Once again, we see so many horses colicking these days because of nervous tension. And if you ask any veterinarian, he will tell you where they see the most colics, where the people are the cruelest to the horses. Saddlebred barns and things like this where horses are just never let out of the frames. I find it amazing to this day that the USDF is still recognizing saddlebred training. I think everyone, certainly if it ever comes up to a vote, should consider the cruelty aspect of these things. And it's not horsemanship. It's just dumbing a horse down so that somebody can sit on it and there's no movement in his back is all that it is. But, to have horses that are with broken tails, tail sets and in stalls, if any of you have ever been to these kind of barns where horses they're not allowed to lay down their entire life. The stalls have shelves on them so that the horses can't lay down. They keep them from, they get afraid to lay down because they're all wrapped up in this gear. That's no wonder these horses colic. It's just like a person. It's Stockholm syndrome. You put a person in a box and bring it out once a day and torture it for an hour and put it back, and I guarantee you it's going to develop ulcers. Well, that's what people do to horses, So once again, we have to keep this an active and fun game for these animals so that they'll want to do it. And once again, why is that so important? If nothing else, for your own longevity, because they will try to hurt you eventually, many of them, if they are ridden in the other way. But once again, you've done a really good job here. I'm really impressed with how much you've improved over the last lesson that I saw. Much, much better walk, better trot, better lunge line work, all good. Now we're going to see a little bit of work in hand. And as you may have discovered, the work in hand is harder than it looks. the biggest problem you're having right here is your right hand is too high. So you've got to drop the right hand down. So your right hand should be down along about the same level as the other one. And not so high up. So you'd want to just let that rein lengthen. But this is really quite good, and you're getting to stretch into the contact. So I really don't have any problem with this, and the walk is quite active. So you really did a nice job there, and that shows you how easy that actually is once you get into it. And once again, the horse doesn't resist this because we're putting him in that natural position. And you're going to see this horse develop very quickly with what you're doing there. That hole behind the saddle there, that's not his conformation. That's just his conformation because his back was starting to drop out from underneath it. Actually, what's happening there is that's how we develop L-dips, is the spine is basically just dropping away from the hips. But this is beautiful. By doing this, you're going to change the whole frame here of this horse. The belly will come up. And remember, correct dressage work is really like Pilates. It's core training for the horse. But look how beautiful this horse's neck is now compared to when he's not stretching into the contact and the neck looks very shortened like it does there, how different it changes the horse when he shortens himself all up. So this horse is going to look very different a year from now than it looks now. You know, when I used to hunt, everyone always assumed that I was a very wealthy man because I would have these incredible horses. They thought that, you know, but every one of them was a horse that was given to me because somebody else couldn't ride it and I retrained it. So that's what you can do too. But that was really good work for your first attempts at work in hand. I'm actually quite impressed with that. Good job. I just try to let that outside hand, the one coming over the neck, be a little bit lower when you can so that you can use the whip more effectively. But you really did a good job there. He's got the idea. Now that's absolutely wonderful, just like that. That is very, very good. And we do this a lot, you know, when horses, you know, if I encounter a horse, once in a while I encounter a horse that just simply can't, its back is so bad it simply cannot stretch with the weight on its back. And that's when I do this most of the time. But it's certainly a good thing for anybody to practice because it really teaches you a good feel. You've done a really nice job with that. And he certainly seems to be a good boy, and he's accepting everything you're doing with him so well. Very good, just like that. That's absolutely wonderful. Now you can try to make this step a little more active, which you're doing. So once again, the big thing here is just that left hand, in this case, needs to come down a little bit lower. So you can let that rein lengthen a little bit and bring your hand down lower along the side. Try not to bend over as you're doing there. It's very important that you keep your posture upright and keep your chest lifted when you're doing that. So that also, by lowering that outside hand a little bit, just let the rein lengthen, let your hand come down along the horse's side there a little bit. So your hand is almost over the top of the horse there a little bit. But, you know, having said that, you're still getting the job done. So that's the most important thing. So if you just add a few of these things, see how you're kind of letting yourself fall over a little bit? It's very important that you stay up straight because if something were to go wrong here, the horse could pull you right off of your feet. So it's really important that you be in good posture when you're doing this. But once again, for your first attempts at this is very, very good. Once again, what a difference in this horse over when he's stretched and when he's not. He doesn't even look like the same horse. And over the next few months, as you begin to watch him develop and you watch that underside of the neck will just completely disappear, and the top part of the neck will come up, and you'll see that hole behind your saddle there will fill up. And you will be developing your horse's top line. But even since the last time I saw you, I'm very impressed with how far you've come since then. This is absolutely wonderful work right there. Good. So once again, you're just leaning a little bit too far forward and that outside hand a little bit too high. But other than that, that was really good. Very good work. And now the same work under saddle and how smart you were to do that. You know, he could be a little bit more active here, but the stretch is really good. I would just ask you if I were there just to send him on just a little bit more than that, you know. Really good, just like that. What a good boy he is. That's really nice. So remember, even a horse like this, you know, who doesn't have that big like thoroughbred, warm blood, like set neck kind of said. You can see once again talking about how his neck comes kind of straight out of his body. But once again, that will not affect his ultimate ability to collect. The only thing that affects that is the degree to which he can flex the hind legs. And while this horse is not got the most flexion in the hocks I've ever seen, it's not bad at all, and he'll certainly develop really nicely from that. And what you're going to see, though, over the next year and a half or so as he develops, you're going to see that withers pull up, and he will become a much more uphill horse. Once again, that's what correct training does. It's like, for a child, If you see the oldest people who live the longest usually have the best posture. Well, the same is true of horses that carry themselves correctly. And we can take them into very old age now. I just heard from one of my students the other day that I hadn't seen in years and years, and had a horse that she bought from me, and he lived to be 40 years old, so almost 40 years old. So that was really great to hear. So once again, just a little more active here would be good, but other than that, you're really doing a great job with this. Now that canter, as you could probably see there, I hope was quite hollow. So I would get the horse stretching. I'm not sure this horse is that ready to canter much. Let's take another look here and see if it gets any better. There you go. Well, it's certainly improving. It's a little labored here. I wouldn't do a whole lot of this yet, but that's pretty good. There you go. There you go. He's starting to stretch into it. It would probably be good if you had a bigger space to do that in with him, so he could just keep moving forward a little bit. But once again, once I don't see any reason to do a lot of that with him right now. He really needs to build muscle and stretch in the trot. And then you'll come back to the canter and you'll see it'll be transformed. It's a little hollow right now to do much of it. I would try it once a week or so and just see kind of where it's at. Because what you're going to see is it just gets easier and easier and easier. If you look at the horse that were just Legolas and Amber, for instance, he was such a big horse, we hardly have cantered him at all in the last 2 years. We're just now starting to canter him because he just simply couldn't do it. You ask him to canter, and he just, his canter and stride was just so enormous that he didn't have enough strength to be able to control it. But now he does. So once again, we don't want to do anything out of balance with a horse. We don't want to ride out of balance horses. That's when people get hurt. And when they're hollow, they're out of balance. That's what's a thing you have to remember. Unfortunately, many people today, that's a good little shoulder four that you're doing there. And it doesn't matter whether you're out in the hunt field or a 3-day event or you're going around a little ring like this. Horses can fall down with you, and when they're out of balance, they do. And that's the most dangerous thing that can ever happen to you. When people really get hurt is when horses flip over, and that's usually because they're holding up the front end. That is, they're keeping the front end from being able to right itself. That is, standing martingales. That's why these kind of things, should never be used by any real equestrian or anybody. I would never get on a horse with a standing martingale on it, because if it can't raise its head, it can fall down with you, because that's what happens. They can't right themselves, and that's why horses flip over. That's why they outlawed standing martingales in international competition ultimately by the FEI, because so many people had been injured because they'd put them on very tight and the horses could kind of spring off of them a little bit and jump higher, but then if something went wrong, they flip on top of the rider. So we never want to restrict the horse's movement like that. But once again, this is so much better. This is 100% better than the last video that I saw of you. He already looks better. Look, coming down this long side, how much better the neck looks right there. And there's where we want that walk like that. That's really, really good. So you've done a wonderful job of bringing this horse along since I last saw you, and taking my suggestions and putting them to work, as they say in American Idol. You took our suggestions and you made it work for yourself, and that's what I'm looking for. Once again, and also to see that, none of this is all that difficult, folks. It's all within, if you can reasonably walk, trot, and canter a horse, you can probably train one if you would just understand what the steps involved are and be willing to wait for them to happen and trust that to happen. But that's the biggest problem today, is most people have never seen horses correctly trained, so they just have this, especially here in America, we have this 90-day wonder sort of mentality that, what do you mean it's going to take more than 30 days to train a horse? Well, it does, yes. It takes 2 years to put a foundation on one and 4 years to complete the training. So that's what we have to be thinking in those kind of terms. But then if we do that, we have a horse that lasts for another 20 years. So that's your choice. Do you want to be buying a horse every couple of years, or do you want to develop one that's really going to be your partner and friend and is going to take care of you? Because don't forget that too, It's those people who ride sort of adversarially towards horses eventually get hurt. Every person I've ever seen in my life who rode that way, where they were constantly fighting with the horses, they always got hurt eventually, and usually pretty badly. There might be something to do with karma involved with that. But anyway, Lauren, really great job. I was so happy to see this tape. You've done a wonderful job. I look forward to the next one. You're right on track. Once again, stay away from the canter. Don't do too much of that once a week or so, and on straight lines, and try to make him move out just a little bit more when you do the canter work, like you did towards the very end of there. He started to swing over his back a little bit, but just not much of that. But everything else is right on track. You're doing a great job. I don't see anything particularly wrong with your position there. You're riding with a short enough stirrup. It's okay to lean forward in the stretch if you're riding with a fairly short stirrup. Now, if you're riding with long stirrups, then you can't really do that without throwing yourself out of balance. But great job. I really look forward to your next one. This is Will Faerber from Art to Ride. Keep up the great work, and I look forward to seeing you in the future. Much, much improved. There, how nice that is. And once again, just go back and compare this video with the last one. It's just hugely improved over what I saw. How nice that walk is beginning to swing there. And once again, you finish where you started, and that's what we want to do. See you next time.